Starting, it says stop broadcast. This hangout on air is live. All right, so I was tasked with, I'll just put my business out there. A recruiter told me, hey, a company in Redmond is interested in your resume. This company is Microsoft. And they want you to basically take a JSON file that's sitting on some server, right? So there's some URL path to some server. Take this JSON file, which harbors some type of movie collection content, and write an Android app that just displays, content from that JSON file. And that was it, right? They said we are measuring the quality of your code. And so I said, oh, why can't I just send them code that I already wrote that's a lot more complex, and then they can see the quality of my code for a more complex application. And they said, no, here's your programming assignment. We want you to write a simple app. So I'm like, oh, this is taking away from my time to work on my own private project. And of course, as soon as I start recording, all this noise is coming in from outside. It's fucking annoying. All right, so anyway, let me go ahead and share my screen. It's fucking annoying. As soon as I start recording, then they want to turn on the machines. All right, so I guess I'm doing the screen share. Okay, you are screen sharing. Present to everyone. I guess so. Do I click that? All right, fine. And I need to show this. Okay, I do Control Alt L. That's a shortcut to display my Solution Explorer. I have an Invisalign retainer in my mouth, so it's really hard for me to talk. Normally, I take it out, and I'm able to articulate or talk better. But anyway, this is basically the application, right? And I'm actually recording this because I'm going to send the reviewers, the powers that be that are responsible for considering me as a candidate. This is for you, okay? Yeah, no other candidate is going to do this, but I'm bringing you into my world, and I humbly accept your feedback. All right, so this is my solution. It's called Movies, right? And this is basically broken down into 4 different parts, right? At a high level, we have our integration, we have our tests, and then we have I should really rename this to core. Yeah, that's probably better. Hold up. Ugh. Core, okay. Maybe I should just go ahead and push that right now. And rename to core. It's probably not very descriptive, but whatever. All right, let's go back. So we have integration tests, we have a core library, and then we have a managed movies library. All right. And honestly, well, I'll leave it. That could really be called home, but I'll leave it for right now. No, I'm gonna call it home. Rename. Rename to home. Okay. Yeah, this is my OCD taking over. All right. So we have integration test, core, and our home library. All right. So what does this look like? All right. Well, the way that I model my software is, well, I want to basically have any person that's looking at my solution, I want it to be analogous as them looking at the blueprint or them looking at the architecture. When you look at my Solution Explorer, I want it to scream intent, right? And so at a high level, at an abstract level, there's going to be some integration pieces to this application. There's also going to be some test support to this application, right? But at the core, we're going to have like the core guts or the infrastructure of this app, and we're also going to have different modules of this application, such as home, right? Another module may be manage account, whatever, right? But these are the core tenets, if I can even say that, okay? Now, with that said, what is integration? Let's break that down, all right? Well, our integration is essentially external systems that plug in to our business rules or our domain logic, okay? So what that essentially means is I want to keep my domain logic as pure as possible, and I understand that the application is a user interface, but to me, I want to be able to test my application independent of external systems, right? I want to test my application in complete isolation of external systems. So the way that I do that is I throw up a folder called integration, and this is where I put in external dependencies. The UI dependency. In this case, it's the Android client that we call movies.android, okay? And also, when it comes to the back end, well, we create a repositories library. And this is, well, you guessed it, is going to harbor an interface called iMovies repository. It's also going to contain a type provider, right? If I do Control ML, that should expand it. Yep. So if I do I also add a type provider, right, in which it's going to grab this JSON file from this path, and it's going to initialize this movie provider, and then we're going to take that movie provider type, and we are going to retrieve the values that are within that JSON path, and we're going to load it asynchronously, okay? Because, well, we're doing I/O, so it's probably a good idea to do things asynchronously. And when we grab that result, we're going to go ahead and pull the movie elements from that result, and we're going to, that's going to be in the form of an array. We're going to convert or transform that array to a list, and we're going to map that list into another list that's going to represent a custom type that I created, right? And yeah, that custom type, if you can see, is going to be in this core library called movies, right? Well, that's the name of the file. The actual module is called entities, and I should probably do that, okay? And that's a bug in Visual Studio. I think everything still builds. And if it still builds, then maybe I should also demonstrate that. And I'm sure that the majority of your candidates didn't do this either. They didn't write tests, right? Get movies. And that is green, all right? Here's a test right here. Every test has a setup, a test, and a verify. And also they have a teardown, but the garbage collector does that for us, so it's kind of implicit. But all this is explicit. These are the different stages of a test. And so if we look at the test serves as living documentation, compilable documentation, and we have this notion of a movies view model, right, that we assign into our instance of the view model. And with that view model that we have, when we invoke the constructor or when we instantiate that instance of the view model, we actually pass in or we inject a repository. In this case, it's a movies repository, but specifically it's a mock movies repository. This mock movies repository implements the iMovies repository interface, and that interface has or declares a function called get movies, right, which is what we are doing right here. This is the implementation of the get movies, right? We can go to the definition of iMovies repository. This is what it looks like. It's pretty simple. It's pretty bare bones. All right. So let's go back. Okay. Maybe can I go back to me? Can I go back to me? All right. So to quickly summarize, and then maybe I'll go back again. I'll build applications. It's the domain logic that is what I'm focused on. It's the business rules that matter. It's not the application that matters. It's not the back end that matters. It's not a database that matters. It's why that application is being developed. And essentially, the policies are a set of rules. And that's what matters. And everything else, to me, is a detail, and details get pushed off. So when I exercise that mentality or my thought process, I do TDD, and I go ahead and I write out my test. By default, any application that has UI, I'm going to create a view model for it. I don't care if it doesn't support MVVM, right? If there's no XAML or data binding, I don't care about that. I'm still going to leverage MVVM, and within my activities, which I will demonstrate in very, very soon, my activities are going to rely on a view model, and they're going to basically route click events or any type of UI events to my view model. My view model is going to forward that to my domain model. And my domain model is going to process that request. It's going to return a result, and my view model is going to return that result back to my view, in this case, an activity. So let me show you. All right, let's go. Let me present my screen again. How do I do this? Hold up. How do I do this? And full screen, start screen share. All right, let's go back. So we go back. Now, let me collapse everything. And I talked about integration. I'll go ahead and talk about the UI part of the integration, okay? So here's my Android client, right? I expand that, and here is my main activity. It's the only activity, okay? And this is my main activity. We get this for free, these 2 lines of code, essentially. And I added this load, right? And you're probably like, well, where's load at? Well, main activity, load. Well, load is defined in here because I like to, classes can get pretty complicated when they maintain state and when they involve interactions. And so just like the human body has anatomy, if I even said that right, I think classes that are somewhat complex that reflect presentation, they should be broken down too, right? And so I leverage C#'s partial class, which is this word right here, partial class, and that enables me to create additional classes to support this main activity. We have main activity internal, main activity members, okay? This is what main activity members looks like, which just harbors my view model, and my internal harbors my load method, okay? And within that load, I say, hey, let me get an instance of a repository. But I want the instance to reflect the settings that I'm in, right? Well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, what I mean is I build applications that are testable, okay, that can run in complete isolation of external systems. The applications that I build are not tightly coupled to a database. They are not tightly coupled to a web service. The applications that I build are independent. They can plug in to a web service, they plug into a database, right? They can plug in to, or you can plug in a UI into my application, right? And so coming back, that's essentially what it is. We have the settings file, right, or the settings class, and we have a property called run in isolation, which is a bool, okay? And so the settings that run in isolation, you can set to true or false. When it's set in true, it actually relies on external dependencies. It relies on external systems, okay? And when it's false, it runs in complete isolation. And when it runs in complete isolation, it means that the same data that is leveraged within my unit test is the same data that is like this data right here. All right, if I go to the definition, if I go to the definition, yo, where's my definition at? F12 didn't work. If I go to my definition, this is coming from the test API library, okay? And this is my test data. My test data is harbored within my test API library, all right? And this test API library just doesn't help or support my unit tests. It also supports the testing of my actual application when I run it. So my application is going to essentially ask, hey, what mode am I in? Am I supposed to run in isolation? Or am I actually running an integration, right? And if it is running in isolation, then we're just going to go ahead and, if it's running in isolation, that means that we are going to use our mock movies repository, okay? I'm looking at this kind of weird now. This might have to be switched, but yeah, I have to think hard about this. If it's running in isolation, it should leverage our mock movies repository. And if it's not running in isolation, that means that it's going to rely on external systems, on an external data source. And that's where it's going to basically receive this movies repository, okay? So, with that said, we take this repository instance based on our configuration settings of run in isolation, and we pass that, or what everybody loves to say is we inject that into our view model. And then we call the load method or operation on our view model, okay? We can look at that by going here, and we see that, oh, I'm already in here. Okay, hold up, load, and we're in the wrong one. There we go. Here's our view model. Here's the parameter that it takes. It's iMovies repository. The load operation is right here. And we essentially take this repository and we go ahead and we invoke the get movies function on it. And that's how we load our movies property, right? And if we want to look at get movies, here's our interface, right? Our get movies is going to take a unit as an argument, which is, I guess, very similar to void, or translated, it's not going to take any arguments, and that's the argument that we pass in, and it's going to return a list of movies, okay? So that's our iMovie repository. And so based on the configuration settings, we're either going to have a repository that's going to get movies based on our test API or based on a real external backend, right, or external system. And that loads, right? So you're probably saying, all right, cool. I think I'll follow. I think I understand. All right. Well, what does it look like? Well, this is what it looks like. When I hit run, run. Come on. And hopefully there's no errors. Come on, Android. Come on. We run it. Please don't throw me some funky errors. Okay. And we have, this is our data, all right? Some 1981 movie, some 1991 movie, some 2001 movie, right? This is our list of movies that's fed from our test API, okay? Which means that this application is running in complete isolation of any external systems. Now, if I wanted it to actually touch a web service, well, not a web service, but any external system, such as a web service or anything like that, in this case, this JSON file is on a web server that's outside of this application, that's outside of my personal computer. Then we can essentially update our configuration file and go here, set that to false, right? It's not true. By default, it's false. We run this. And where last time we had, you know, some 1991 movies, some 1981 movie, some 2001 movie, we should have Star Wars, Back to the Future, The Matrix, Inception, Interstellar, okay? Again, where am I at? That's a result of this code right here. We're running the application in isolation, right? We have the option to do this in isolation, right? And the reason why I go out my way to put in this type of infrastructure up front is because I want to spend more time building and extending software instead of debugging it, because the majority of the time spent on software is debugging it. It's not building the software, it is troubleshooting the software. And you troubleshoot software when you have to launch the application just to test the application, which we still do, but we do that to, in this case, to find edge cases, to flush out edge cases, right? When we have this type of infrastructure set up, then we are able to quickly decipher if an anomaly that has been introduced to us or exposed to us is from integration logic or is from the core business logic, right? And this enables us, this supports us to troubleshoot, to identify which half that belongs to, integration logic or business logic. Where's that anomaly at, right? And that's essentially it, you know. And is there anything else I want to share with you? Let's recap. I talked about integration, repositories, and the actual UI client. I talked about, I showed you my unit test, right? Which I have a movies unit test. Get movies, right? And there's a test API that I created that will feed my unit tests, and also it will feed my application, right? And mock movies repository. That is the repository that is responsible for, well, getting dummy data that enables my application to run in isolation without depending on any external systems. So that is my mock movies repository. All right. And then our home, right? Our home library contains our view model. Our view model is initialized as an empty list, right? There's a load method on here. Depending on the, well, we have an interface instance that basically gets the movies, depending on our configuration settings of running isolation or not. That populates our movies property, and that gets reflected on the screen. All right, and that is, let me commit this. Did I change anything? I don't think I changed. I'll hold off. I'll do that later. And let me go back to me. Let me go back. You are screen sharing, presenting to everyone. All right. Well, stop screen sharing. All right. That is it. That is me going over my programming assignment for you, and I'm going to provide you the link to my GitHub. That's under Bismonger. So on GitHub, just look for Bismonger. You'll see a repo called Movies. That's where my code is. This video is an artifact of it. It complements it, so you can understand my thought process. And I know you want C#, but I gave you some C#, right? The client's in C#, but my domain logic, what I believe is more productive and lets me write less code, and less code I have to write, the less surface area that bugs can creep up in. That's in F#. I hope you enjoyed my dissertation. And this was a fun exercise for me, all right? I was angry at first because I didn't feel like doing another programming exercise that I couldn't leverage. But I am going to use this as a YouTube video because I'll try to kill as many birds with one stone as possible. That's it. Thank you. Adios, te veo a ratito. And you just contributed to my YouTube videos. That's it. I'm out. My name is Scott Nimrod, and I'm interested in contracts. All right, I'm out. Bye. I'm hitting the stop broadcast.